Joining us now is author Daren Martin.
Culture is the game. If you don't change the culture, you don't change the company.
Great cultures over the course of 10 years will yield a 746% increase in your net profit.
Holy moly!
1% in the top 1% is worth 12 in the bottom 1%. Called the culture architect for a reason.
We need to get into it.
Okay. And we're back. Company Culture with Daren Martin and the Great.
Alice Martin.
Episode number 2. So we had a little bit of a glitch there. We're starting late. I think we're like, what, 4 minutes late, 5 minutes late. Yes, we will not let that happen again. It is against our personal mantra to be late. No big deal.
For being on time is the politeness of princes.
Okay, I don't know where that came from. So we are so excited about today's show. We've been talking about it all week. By the way, this is the first of its kind podcast that is dedicated to company culture. There are a lot of shows who talk about it, but that is really our topic full on. And if you think that we're going to exhaust that topic at some point, just not going to happen. There's so many areas to talk about when it comes to workplace. Today, specifically, we're going to talk about different kind of cultures that are either designed or that happen by default. Because in my experience, company culture happens by design or it happens by default. And a lot of them are happening by default.
Too many are happening. Too many have already happened by default.
So, I mean, if you think about it, do you have someone at your company that is directly responsible for managing the culture? And what I mean by that is there's somebody, a C-level executive, someone in a senior position that kind of gets to air traffic control that. Now,
or a group. You could have a group, committee, a culture committee, and it could be like an extra fun task that you haven't. I worked for a company where we had a culture group, culture club, and we all got together.
That made sure that was all coming together.
Yeah.
And I love that as well. The thing is, I really believe everybody at the company is responsible for the culture.
Everybody.
I love when people say, well, I don't like our company culture, but what are they actually doing to do something about it?
That's like saying I don't like my sandwich, but you keep buying the same sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta take some ownership in that. So, but when we look at default cultures, let me give you a couple of default cultures. And if you recognize these out there, what we want you to do is we do want you to play along at home, play along at work.
Yep.
And when you're hearing these things, kind of evaluate your own culture, evaluate your own company, whether you're a leader, you've got some responsibility in that regard, or you're an individual contributor. Be thinking about, does this fit? Does this apply to you? And what are some things you could do to change it if so? So one big default culture is a CYA culture. Cover your arse. I don't think we have a clean show here, so we try to be careful. But everybody knows what CYA is, right?
Yeah.
That is a culture that is dominated by fear, where people walk around on tiptoes.
Fear is bad. Fear is bad.
Yeah, absolutely, because it intimidates people. It keeps people from bringing their best. A CYA culture is one where jerks kind of dominate and rule.
We don't hire intelligent jerks.
Yes, super intelligent jerks. That's part of Netflix culture deck.
Not even worth it.
And I talk quite often about going out to a company where they had management by screaming and yelling obscenities at people.
That sounds mean.
It was not cool. And they would use phrases like the top dog would use phrases like, I'm going to go put you need to go put a boot on their neck, or tell them I'm going to come put my boot so far up there, if they don't get this straightened out.
What kind of cultures have you seen, Daren?
Trust me, I've seen a lot. That's why we write about and speak about this subject. So yeah, a CYA culture, definitely, where people are just trying to not get fired. That energy is it just creates such a negative vibe. People are afraid to put themselves out there. They're afraid to shine, and they're also afraid to have their name on something. It's like, whoa, not me. Let's do something else.
So then we're asking basically for them to look around their culture and ask, do I have fear to voice my opinion, to speak up, to share ideas, to get involved, to...
If you have a second of hesitation about those things at work...
You might have a CYA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Ideally, what you want to create is a culture where anybody can say anything, obviously, in a as helpful and as constructive and kind a way as possible.
Right.
But the stronger your culture, the more truth and the more openness there ought to be, and without this just, trying to protect yourself.
Right.
Because a lot of companies that are CYA cultures, people get fired for the wrong things. They get fired for
having an opinion?
Having an opinion,
Oh,
going against whatever the boss is saying, and they may be right. I mean, how many examples have we seen from companies with this that, the employee was actually right, management, leadership was wrong.
But it's also important for the employees to remember to voice their opinion the right, politely. It doesn't mean saying, you're wrong.
I've had people who say, well, they just didn't want to hear the truth. Well, part of hearing the truth is the way you say it.
Yes.
And that's true whether you're the boss, quote unquote, or whether you're, people at work. You've got to say things in a respectful manner. But so CYA culture, let me give you some more.
Okay. Give us another one, Daren.
Default cultures.
Another one.
This one I love, a cobbled culture.
What's that?
So
What?
a cobbled culture, Elise.
Like a cheese cobbler?
No,
Like an
not.
apple
It has
cobbler?
nothing to do with a well, actually, because a boy,
Sorry,
this is.
I just
I don't
went
think a
off- went off the road.
cobbler.
Sorry, my
a
bad.
cobbler is a lot of ingredients mixed together, but they work. When I talk about cobbled, I'm talking about when you build something piecemeal. You grab a little bit of this, you grab a little bit of that.
Maybe we could call it Lego culture.
No, that doesn't work either.
We could call it the multicolored Lego culture.
Yes, that's a whole different culture. So cobbled cultures are cultures where you've kind of piecemealed things. Well, back when we did this and now we're doing that. Think about building a building. We were, in Chicago, we saw some incredible architecture there. Think about building a building where you are just adding on things as you go versus really designing it, architecting it, if you will, from the beginning.
Yes, I see what you mean.
And being thoughtful about it.
Right.
If I saw a video one time about a house that was built over a process of 35, 40 years, one room at a time. So it started this little shack, and now we're going to add a living room. And now we're going to add a second floor. And the thing looked like a hodgepodge of just chaos.
Wow.
Cobbled cultures are chaotic cultures because there's no rhyme or reason. There's no energy around why they're
It's
working.
it's like those buildings we've seen where they take the old part of the section of the building and the rest of it burned down, so they build a new section of the building and they attach them together, and you've got brown like old style and you've got new modern style
It
connected
just doesn't
together.
fit.
It looks very strange.
Now, you can put different elements together if it's done in a really intelligent way, but when it just happens by default, no, bad. Okay, you inspired this one.
Did I?
Cookie cutter culture. I think I came up with the term. You don't like cookie cutter. You like what's your phrase?
Generic.
Generic. It just doesn't have the
I
same
like it better.
ring
I
to
don't know.
it. So
Let's just have everybody online chime in.
So,
do you like generic as a term or cookie cutter?
So
you choose.
To me, cookie cutter, I'm going to make my case now about why you should go with cookie cutter. But cookie cutter is when you go and you say something like, oh, well, Google does this, so we should do that.
Sounds like generic.
Southwest Airlines does this. Chick-fil-A does this. Let's go copy what they're doing. And it's just this copycat, cookie cutter sort of. You just are trying to take what somebody else is doing. Doesn't work that way. It doesn't work in terms of families. We should do things exactly like somebody else does, and it certainly doesn't work in a work environment.
No, it wouldn't work in marriages either. But we had that great example of a friend of ours that went to visit a culture. So this company had decided that they were going to do company culture. And they decided that meant buying some scooters and a foosball table.
Yeah,
And
because
then-
you're supposed to have fun stuff, right? But
So
nobody was using it.
Our friend
Nobody
went to
was-
visit this culture, and you walk in, it's dead silence. And there's all these beautiful, pristine scooters that have never been used lined up, and a foosball table that's never been used, and all the staff are like this.
So this is what happens when you try to take an idea.
Right.
It's disconnected, by the way, from
Right.
what the real purpose is, because there are all sorts of meaningful, like when Jack Welch took over, I believe it was GE or whatever, but they built, even though they were financially strapped at the time, they
Right.
were laying people off. They also built these gyms, and people go, well, wait, why are you laying people off and then building these gyms? But the reason was because they wanted people staying after work and connecting, being on the treadmill, so that you've got frontline people that are next to, VPs who need that communication to really be able to make intelligent decisions. It wasn't just, oh yeah, well, if you want to have a successful culture, you should follow what Jack Welch did and put in a gym. No. There was a purpose behind it, for the same reason that, I'm not sure if they're still doing this, I think they are, but Google feeds people. They put a cafeteria in because they want people to stay around for lunch and to hang out and talk to each other.
I love the story about the hat. What?
Isn't
that a great story? I love that
yeah.
one.
So evidently the newbies at Google are called nooglers. Okay.
I love that.
Because they're new Googlers.
New Googlers.
Nooglers.
Nooglers.
So, and they wear these little beanies that have the little spinny thing on top. And when they go to their first, I don't know, they do these happy hours or things. I guess it's probably once a week. But when they go, then people recognize them. They go up, they greet them, they, et cetera. So, hey, that may take that idea and go, oh, okay, well, we're going to call new people at our company nooglers. No, you've got to come up with something that is unique
to
and
you.
crafted for you. This is not a one size fits all culture. When people say, well, what do I need to do to have a great culture? There's some answers to that, but the answers are not as specific as you would think. There's a formula that goes into creating a culture, and at some point we'll talk about that. But it really has more to do with what is going to fit what you're trying to accomplish as a company.
Right, and getting into that. The best place to start is to have a vision meeting with your leadership team and the owner or the person that's driving the culture, and discuss what are our values, what is our BAM, what is our the Ritz-Carlton.
And then you can build around that.
But no, I think you don't just go into building. I say you have a leadership. This is my thought.
Yeah,
you have a
I love
leadership
it.
meeting and you discuss the values, what you're about, all that stuff. Then you go and talk to your clients, your vendors, your accountants, your customers, and get the feel from them for what kind of culture they're receiving right now, right? Yeah. What's their impression of your culture, your values, right? Find out where your culture is right now before you start building, because sometimes you can, work with that and then go and get honest answers from your employees.
It's got to be all
right?
hands on deck. Right? I agree.
Because you want to combine, you want to, what's the word? For example, if 90% of your staff are really into saving the planet and recycling, you want to combine that into your culture because united core values. So if my personal core values are united with the company core values, it's going to make all the difference in bringing everything together into that beautiful cake.
Yes, unless your company business is in the business of destroying the planet, and then you're going to have a mismatch there.
Oh my God.
Better not be the case. Just kidding. So yeah, it's about.
I'm trying to think of a company that's involved in destroying the planet.
Trust me, there's a bunch of them out there. Send your emails. But I'm actually appalled by how many companies out there are not actually contributing to the environment, and how many have really started taking the lead of saying, "Hey, let's."
I think everybody can have some good input on the environment. But anyways, we're getting off topic.
Yes, yes, we are. So cultures are either designed.
Generic.
And they're either by default or design. How is your company? Is it default or is it designed? Your company culture. And here's the thing: if you were to go around and ask people at your company and say, "What is most important to us as a company? What do we value? What behaviors are most important to us in the way that we treat each other, in the way that we handle assignments, in the way that we handle work? What are the things that are extremely important to us when dealing with customers or when dealing with other people?" And if you get different answers from different people, if you ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers.
Yeah.
pretty
You know,
good chance
problem.
nobody really knows what's going on and, what the culture is. It hasn't been defined or designed around those elements.
And we also need to remember that leadership needs to be the champion of the culture at all times. They are the champions of the culture. They're the roar, not the lion, right? Does that make sense?
I don't think it does.
It was in a book I read.
They're the roar, not
right?
the lion.
You're the roar, which is roar.
The messaging.
Right? The lead. You're leading it. You're the champion. You're championing
Okay,
it. But
that
you're
does
not.
make sense.
You're not telling them, if you don't do this, you're fired because you're not in line with our culture. No, you want to champion the culture. You want it to be fun. You want people to be engaged. You want people to be excited. You want happiness in the workplace. It's contagious. I'm just going to go on forever.
Okay, so you told me this, which I didn't realize, but that one of the reasons Netflix did their culture deck on PowerPoint instead of posting on the walls because they want it to be fluid.
Fluid, exactly.
They want to be able to shift and change. And I've read recently about some companies who went back and had to evaluate their 30-year long-held beliefs that just kind of got to be, part of who the company was. But they had to go back and say, do these fit for today?
Right.
So like anything else, anything in your house, anything like that, upgrades are needed, and you've got to make sure that you're changing with the times.
Yes, absolutely.
That you're changing with the availability of things like technology and so forth, because the way we used to do things from a culture standpoint may not fit in today's world.
But not just that, if you're doing that with every other aspect of your business, every year accounting comes down to admin and says, hey, did you review the rental equipment we have and the copier? Did you get, as an admin, you have to go every year and just double check to make sure there's not something cheaper, better, to replace it. You always want to be renewing and updating.
Yeah.
And if you do that in every aspect of your company, why wouldn't you do it with your culture?
Absolutely. I mean, everything needs a refresh. Right now we're in, I guess we're out of spring. But we were just talking about at our place doing a spring cleaning and kind of going through and out with the old and in with the new. And your culture certainly is, it ought to be a work in progress.
At all times.
It ought to be something that is continuing to evolve and develop. Now, you don't want to be, crazy with it all over the road where nobody knows from day to day what's actually happening and what do we stand for and what are we about. But you certainly want something that you build that has some fluidity to it and that can shift and change as needed.
That's why I'm really pro the committee. I'm really pro having a company culture committee, and I'm pro having, especially if you have a default culture, right? That means that you have silos, because in default cultures, it's very common that the sales are friends with the sales and production doesn't talk to them. And when you go to parties, everybody breaks off into little groups and then nobody's mixed mingling. And I think that when you build a committee and you force one person in the beginning, you'll have to choose them. Leadership will have to choose them. Nobody's going to nominate anybody, usually. And then put them all together, right? You've got one person from accounting and one person from sales and one person from here and there and there. And now you put them in a room and they need to discuss the culture and discuss what they think, and each department will have different insights and they have to come to decisions, try stuff out with the staff,
So I'm all for that as long as they are empowered.
Yes.
And as long as there's some far-reaching authority that they have, and obviously with input, but they have to be, because I've seen too many times companies put something like that together, and then they go, "No, we're not going to do any of that. We don't like that."
I think that if
that's
the company
worse
is going to
than
put
not
them
doing
together,
anything at all.
They need to empower them. You empower them. I'm not saying give them a giant budget, but listen to their thoughts. It's okay. Let them have a meeting. Let them come have a meeting with you. Hey, we polled the staff. We talked to all the managers. This is what we thought is good fit, and we want to try it. And I think that CEOs and supervisors should let them try it. It's okay if it doesn't hurt. If it's nothing harmful, like we're not talking about bringing a rhino into the office for, Rhino Day.
Hey, maybe there should be Rhino Day. Okay, so one of the things that's important when you start talking about culture is the environment itself. And what does it look like? What's the feel when you walk in the building? Is it dark? Is it drab? Does it... what does the furniture say? What does the kind of lighting in the place say? By the way, I was reading about Rackspace down in San Antonio, the leader, one of the leaders in cloud computing. And they stayed in San Antonio for a reason, very committed to that as a city. By the way, do you know the 5 largest cities in Texas? This is a little test for everybody out there. What are the 5 largest cities in Texas?
Dallas?
In order.
Fort Worth. Dallas?
Fort Worth is not the number 1 largest city in Texas.
Look, I grew up in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, so let me give them to you. Houston, number
really?
1.
It's the largest?
We're getting ready to be in Houston for a keynote for a CIO and a CISO event.
I didn't know it was that big.
Yeah, guess who's number 2? Obviously, we all know.
Dallas.
Dallas. No, it's not Dallas. It's San Antonio, and that's what kind of shocked me when I saw the numbers.
Really?
So it's actually Houston, San
I'm learning
Antonio,
something today.
and then Dallas. In fact, I had to Google that.
Wow.
Anyway, back to Rackspace.
I love San Antonio, by the way.
One of the things that Rackspace did when they went to expand and build their new location was they started looking around. Rather than building something, can we buy something? And they found this old mall in a really kind of rundown part of town. Some might say a dangerous part of town. And they went in, but they started thinking about, hey, this could be really cool. Long and short of it, the employees were all, posed like we're going to get killed coming to work. But what they started doing was they started investing in the community around it and putting in restaurants and shops and things.
That's smart.
So that, hey, if we can't have it where we want it, let's create an area around it that really just elevates the whole neighborhood. They took this on. They started giving money to causes, to schools. It was brilliant.
Right.
But their space, I'm so excited at some point to get down and see Rackspace space, because what they've done is they built this mall. So instead of elevators, for example, you have escalators. Well, what's the difference? Well, when you get in an elevator, you're in a box by yourself, and all of a sudden now you're on an escalator. You're passing people. Hey, whoa, somebody's going up, you're coming down. It's just a much more open environment.
I think we saw this in Malaysia, with that mall that had the escalators, so you travel through the mall like that.
Yes, absolutely. So, but that's a mall. I mean, you would expect that there, but for a workplace,
I like that.
I just think it's phenomenal.
I love that.
So we've got a quick little video, one of our beach dwell ones, about the kind of environment people are working in. Watch this.
Environment's important.
So I work in a place with just plain walls, and I work in a place with boring furniture.
Oh, it's black and white.
And it's very black and white.
Oh, I don't like black and white.
Seriously, that's the kind of environment that a lot of people are working in. They're working in boring cubicles. Environment, all the science, all the research says the kind of environment you work in, whether it's neat, whether it's colorful, there's artwork, there's all sorts of cool things going on.
People have their own individual awesome mics.
It creates creativity. So you want to make sure that your physical environment is actually supporting the kind of results that you want to see from your people. Walk around the hallways. Is there artwork on the walls? Are you promoting beauty and fun? Because when you do that, you'll actually get more work out of it. So if you're a beach dwell company, what do you want to do?
Post my picture on the wall.
Unbeach. Wow. Post my picture on the wall. Yeah, so environment's everything. We, by the way, are in...
post the staff members' pictures on the wall. It makes them feel belonged. And you can have Employee of the Year.
I think I talked about this last show, but Southwest that has all sorts of their accolades around. Okay, so we're back in studio at On Air Media. This is our second show, second studio.
We're back again next week.
What people don't realize is that they're building this phenomenal complex here. But what that means is it's a little glitchy. We're getting it going. We've got, we're kind of hodgepodgey at the moment in here as I get the lights put in and all that stuff. So
it's not about the way it looks. It's about the content, Darren.
It is about the content, but we're working on the video quality and all of that kind of stuff as well. So big, better, even things to come. So a couple of things you can help us with the show, and some of y'all have already done this. Go on YouTube, if you would, and subscribe. That way you'll get notification when we're coming on. Go to iTunes. The show is up and official on iTunes.
We need to get in the new and noteworthy. Subscribe.
We would love to, and we want to get there because it's actually bringing you...
Write a review.
Because it's bringing you value. So if you'll go into iTunes, subscribe, then you'll get notification when the show is coming on. And then if you'll also give it a rating and then give your comments. And we would, we'd love to hear from you directly. You can get to us very easily, DarenMartin.com, DAREN, Martin.com. We want to hear your show ideas. We want to hear your feedback. what you'd like to see different. We got some great feedback from the first show.
Ask questions. Yes.
Yeah,
yes. Tell us how we can help you. And as a closing note, I would love it if you would take what we've just talked about. Go back to your culture. Look around your office. Try to figure out what kind of culture you already have. Is it by default? Is it by design? And if it's by design, continue designing it. Continue to grow. We're in the biggest shift of all time, which means that we need to continue to evolve. Even in the world of marketing and social media, we know this.
So if you are a manager or leader, ask your people at one of your meetings, just say, hey, I want everybody to take the next 5 minutes and write 3 to 5 sentences that describe our culture. And then have them turn them in or maybe even read them out loud and see how consistent they are. Are they matching up? It is never too late to go back and design a culture instead of just accepting what you have by default. What's the old saying? When's the best time to plant a tree? 15 years ago. When's the next best time today? So get started on it. If you're finding that, there's not a lot of definition, it hasn't happened on purpose, and certainly reach out to us. We're happy to help with that any way we can.
Absolutely. So. And what happens to cultures that improve their culture?
700, this is in the show opening, 746, Harvard did a study, 746%, I believe that's the right number, increase to the net profitability over 10 years. Now, who doesn't want to have that kind of an increase in their profitability?
Right? So just go do it.
So every show we're gonna Martinize something. Here we go.
Martinize.
So we have to give a shout out to Bruce Waller, who posted this on social media because he got Martinized last week. I love it. So he took a picture of his business card, and he actually has a fax on there, and he circled it and put, "I've just been Martinized." Oops, So
yikes.
I'm assuming Bruce's future business cards. By the way, Bruce,
we love Bruce,
dear friend, he's a senior exec with Armstrong Relocation Services, large company. They do a lot of relocation services.
But it's a good example. Hey, if you feel like you see something that should be Martinized, send it to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have it on the show. Yep.
Yeah, I think he's saying he was the on the receiving end of that rather than suggesting. So,
oh, you mean somebody else circled it?
No.
Oh.
No. At any rate, so Bruce Waller actually has a great book out as well called Change Your Lane. You can find that. I love
like
it.
that book.
I've read it.
Yes, I read it.
It's a quick hit little read like all of our books are. By the way, you want to hear more about company culture? We just had the 3rd reprinting of A Company of Owners. If you don't have that book, go online right now, get that book, A Company of Owners. It'll inspire a lot of thinking, and what's coming next. Part 2 of that is going to be called Architecting a Company of Owners. I'm sorry, I got off Martinize. Okay,
Yep.
I'm ready to Martinize something. I am sick and tired of people having bad attitudes at work. So I called a company this week. The lady got on the phone. She said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm outstanding. How are you?" And she said, "I'm great." And then she said, "Thank you for being in a good mood."
Aww.
Yeah, exactly. And I went, "Wait, what? What, are you kidding me?"
How many
and
people
I said,
did she take phone calls from that are not nice to her?
Yeah, so I asked her, I said,
let
let me ask you a question. Just out of curiosity, I said, what percentage of the people you talk to are in a bad mood when they are in a good mood when they talk to you? And she said, "Do you want the truth?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I want the truth." And she said 10%. So that means she's got a lot of grumpy people on the phone. Now, that's customer service, et cetera, et cetera.
Shouldn't be.
At work, it is unconscionable that you've got people walking the hallways that are dragging other people down. So let me put it this way.
Just putting out evil vibes.
What if somebody came to work, right? Got a big setting, got a lot of people, and they have the flu, and they're walking around doing this.
Stay home.
Coughing. What would you do with them? Would you let them stay at work?
I would send them home. Home.
Why? Because they're going to
home.
what?
I would be like, go
home. Why would you send them home?
Because they're going to infect everyone else. It's going to bring down productivity.
Okay, infect everyone else, and that's the point. It's not just the flu. It's not just disease. It's not just physical illness that can infect everybody else.
I like this one.
It's much worse with attitude. Your attitude infects everybody.
The energy you're spreading. It's like we say happiness is contagious, so bad energy is also
we'll just drag everything down.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a business owner a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about this subject, and he said that he told his folks at work, he said, "Listen, if you're having a bad day and you're just, it's just something's going wrong, it's just not working, call me. you can have a day off. I'll give you a day off.
Wow,
That's
I
totally,
love it.
stay home, take care of yourself. But he said, but if you're having a bad day and you bring that attitude to work, now we have a problem.
Yes.
Because now you're impacting
I agree.
our operation. Now
I agree.
you're impacting everybody else. So if you're going to go to work, go to work with a great attitude, because you influence the people around you. We'll get into some studies at some point about not only that, you also influence yourself, the kind of attitude you bring into a situation. So
Happiness
that's
is
my
a
Martin
choice.
Eyes.
I think happiness is a choice. I think you just wake up and decide today's going to be a good day.
Well, an attitude ought to be a term of your employment. We have all sorts of things written into your job description.
Oh, I like that.
You have to
That
do
could be interesting.
you can't
we
steal.
could do a whole episode on that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't steal from the company. You steal from the company, you're going to get fired. What about when you steal the emotional energy of an office by the way you drag
Suck
yourself
all the
in?
happiness out of the room.
Yes, absolutely.
Like a drain, like a vampire that comes in and sucks all the happiness out of the company, and everybody becomes dark and gloomy.
I'm so scared right now. Okay, bad attitude is bad business. Stop it.
Stop it.
All right, so future episodes, we're going to be talking about diversity and inclusion. We're going to be talking about
I'm excited about
hiring
that.
and firing. I've
Like
got
that.
some core questions in terms of what do you need to consider when you're
Pronoun peril. We're going to talk about
pronoun peril. We're going to talk about silos for sure.
Talk
We got
about
a lot of different topics
language.
that we're going to be mentioning, and we'd love to hear what you want
Want
us
to hear
to talk
next?
about.
What do you want to hear
All right.
next? Tell us.
So that's a wrap on episode 2 of Company Culture with Daren Martin.
Subscribe.
And
Elise Martin.
go subscribe to us, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.